Yearlies. Your yearlies, is that what they call it?
Yeah.
Your yearly tests. What ends up happening is you'll get like a CBC, CMP, and so you get your glucose tested, right? But the thing is this, your glucose, your blood sugar can look normal and you're having signs of a metabolic issue.
Oh, yeah.
How does that happen?
You see it all the time.
All the time. It's because of this. So let's say your blood sugar, your glucose on labs, let's say your glucose is 80 and my glucose is 80. And that's great. Like, that's actually where you want your glucose to be. So you guys that are having glucose at 99, 98, that's a big red flag that something is going on with that blood sugar.
But a lot of doctors tell them that's normal because it's within their
because it's within the range. Yeah. So you can have blood sugar at 99, but guess what you are at 100 or 101? Then that's a problem, right? It's this one little line they wait for you to pass. So you can have blood sugar where it's 80, and that looks beautiful, right? Mm-hmm. But when we look at your insulin is like 30, and my insulin is 9. Just so you know, you want your insulin as low as possible. So you're having to release all this insulin every meal, every day to try to maintain your glucose. So is that healthy? You look at this number and it looks okay, but you have all of this insulin. And why is that problematic? Because you'll release a lot of insulin over and over and over again until when? Until you can't.
Yeah.
Then your insulin crashes and your blood sugar's going crazy. Your cell receptors are not sensitive anymore to get glucose into the cell. And here you have diabetes or PCOS or gestational diabetes or Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
And that is why you can go year to year. I had a young lady, probably early 30s. We're still coaching with us, who came in and she was fine. I mean, she had gained weight. She couldn't lose it. She felt inflamed, but nothing like severe. And all of her symptoms, I was like, we're going to do some blood work. Her glucose was 200. 200.
Oh,
remember,
no.
It should be in the 80s.
Yeah.
So she went day to day, fine-ish. She could manage. A lot of you guys are just managing.
Yeah.
You're managing. You can manage it because your body's remarkable and it's amazing, and it's going to work extra hard to keep itself as balanced as it can until it can't anymore. And when it can't anymore, it's not because your body failed you. You didn't develop type 2 diabetes or PCOS, all of this, because your body failed you. It's because it could no longer handle the stressors you've put on it, okay? Yeah. You're not going to get mad at your car for breaking down if you don't do the oil changes, if you don't... I don't really know much about cars. Oil changes... timing chain, I don't know.
Hey,
like
that's important. Yeah.
If you don't keep up with your car,
We've
and then
learned the hard way on that one.
We've done that before. Yep. We took our car when it was making noises to Mississippi, and on the way back, it broke down.
Yep.
We knew the whole engine, like kids under 2, and on the side of the road at 9:00, pitch black on the highway, and it was such a frustrating experience. But we both knew we did this because we did not take care of our car. Yep. So that's what happens with this whole blood sugar issue.
Well, and also too, I was reading an article the other day, and in the magazine article, it was actually showing, it was a medical doctor that was in it. I think it was from like a magazine from like Franklin, Tennessee or something. And anyway, in it was talking about a doctor who was an oncologist who got diagnosed with cancer, right? And his quote in it was trying to fight this bad curse that happened to me, right? And I thought about it. I was like, man, this is probably why, just like on average, on par for oncologists across the country, this is why half your patients die, because you look at it as a curse rather than as something that you developed that means you can do something about it. right? And so it's that same mindset with diabetes or pre-diabetes. It's no different. That it's not a curse that happened to you. There's some of you that are listening on this radio show that have type 2 diabetes, and you are still holding on to this thought and this idea that says, no, I woke up and this happened to me. There's nothing I could have done about it. And you hold on to that because it's easier to think that way than to think, no, it was the candy bars, the cakes, the cookies, the sweet tea that had so much sugar in it that the spoon would stand up in the pitcher. It's the constant eating of fried foods and fried chicken and all of these different things. But you don't want to think that, so you would rather think that it happened to you. And that, when you take that type of mindset, it may be easier from like a mindset standpoint, but you will never get well. Yeah. You won't get well because you're not owning the responsibility of what it took to get to where you are, which means that if you reverse engineer it, guess what? You can reverse diabetes. Let me tell you, I don't care what you hear on a commercial. I don't care what your doctors have told you. I don't care what anybody has told you. Type 2 diabetes is reversible. And I would even go off and say this. There are cases, and there have been cases in our office, of type 1 diabetes actually improving over time. Yeah, and people can say, oh my God, no, that can't happen. That's it. You're born with it. Well, you can tell me it can't happen, and then I can physically see it with my eyes that it can happen. There's a whole Facebook group, I think it's Type 1 Grit, where it's hundreds of thousands of people who are not on insulin with type 1 diabetes. So don't tell me that it can't happen, because I've seen it happen. And if you do that, listen, I can't stress this enough. Your metabolic health will determine whether you get cancer. It will determine whether you get heart disease. It'll determine whether you live long and a happy and vibrant life, or where you're in a nursing home or assisted living and you can't remember who your family is. Yeah. That is all determined by your metabolic health.
And this is the thing, like, the biggest takeaway, like, I heard that, I kept thinking, it was like, if I could just, the biggest takeaway I hope you get from this show is that when there's a metabolic issue, when there's a glucose insulin issue, rather than think, great, now I have this blood sugar issue. If you could understand your body just a little bit better, I don't need you to know how every system works, but if you could understand that is just your body telling you what it needs from you, and then providing your body what it needs, you can see a change.
Yes.
Absolutely. You can see a change with this blood sugar imbalance. It'll take a little bit of work, but I can promise you this, every single person we've helped with blood sugar imbalance in our office, they've enjoyed the changes. I'm not telling you to go out there and never enjoy your life again, because you can't ever had any good yummy food because you have to change it. But it's worth making the changes, because whether you have the symptoms now or not, every single American can have this issue, and a majority of you guys probably have the issue right now without even knowing it.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, and we learned a really, really good lesson, and it was because of you, from our kids, actually from Rosie, and it was a good lesson. What was this, almost a year and a half ago, when Dr. Rebecca was testing her ketone levels, and she's Rosie's like, I want to test my ketone. No, it was Elijah. Sugar. Was it Elijah?
I think it was both of them.
Okay, they were like, I want to test my ketones, and we're like, okay, you want to do a little finger prick? And they're like, yeah. And so here, what ended up happening was we tested them. They were both in ketosis, nutritional ketosis. That morning, listen to this, they had eaten, which was not a low-carb meal, for breakfast, and the night before, they'd actually eaten a lot of healthy carbohydrates.
They eat fruit and, yep.
But it was an important lesson, because what it showed us is, because the kids are metabolically flexible and healthy, the carbohydrates that they consume went directly to their muscles and directly to their brain to be used.
They burned it.
To be used almost immediately. And that is really the key. So when you were talking about, you can never, it's not like you go the rest of your life and you can never have, a treat again, or you can never have, a good carbohydrate foods. That's not true. Yeah. You can, but you're going to have to work really, really hard to get back to a point where when you consume carbohydrates or when you consume some sugar, that's burned by your muscles and it's burned by your brain, and that is where the magic happens, because then you're back into burning fat again once you run out of that fuel. And your body's not storing up tons of glycogen in the liver. It's not storing up tons of sugar, again in your fat cells, and really storing it that way. You're actually a metabolic burner, right? And when you're doing it that way, it's fantastic.
Your body has to know what to do with it, and a lot of your bodies don't know what to do with it right now, and you need to help it.
Yep.
It's not dumb. It just needs some help. All right. So we have to go on break. This is the Wellness Radio. If you're listening to this and it's for you, your loved one, family member, whatever it may be, you're like, man, I want some help to finally get down to the cause of why my blood sugar, my insulin, my metabolic issues going on. We do have appointments in the office, or sign up for a newsletter. We send out a lot of really great information, supplements, advice, all this stuff. You can do that a few different ways. Go to drswarren.com, DRSWARREN.com. Find us on Facebook. We are live. You can see the replay on our Facebook and on our website. But if you'd like our help and you want to set up a consult, our number is 423-362-5360. Again, that's 423-362-5360. And we'll see you right after the break. All right. This is a really good... Okay. This is a really good question, and I'm going to let you touch on that.
Okay.
Do y'all believe pathogens and mold could be a part of the cause of metabolic issues like diabetes or prediabetes?
Oh, absolutely. It definitely.
I think it can be different causes. Let me go.
Oh, absolutely. It can be a primary cause. Yeah, I mean it's but you're right. There's a lot of different issues. Because I'll even say this: a lot of my patients with pathogens like parasites, with overgrowth of bacteria like H. pylori, C. diff, those type of things, or people that are exposed to mold. You know what I find in common with all of those? They all crave high carbohydrate foods, all of them, and they're always looking for something sweet. That's why, again, they have a really hard time of being weight loss resistance, which is another thing that can lead to, metabolic issues, because the mold, for example, damages your cells and your immune system so much that you become weight loss resistant, and that weight loss resistant drives metabolic disease. But I will say this is something interesting. I find that some of my patients that have had really bad parasitic infections can actually suffer with low blood sugar, hypoglycemia a lot, because those parasites are constantly consuming, a lot of the nutrients, constantly consuming a lot of even natural, carbohydrates. So their body will actually drop a little bit too low, and you can see some issues there too. So it depends, but I do think that mold and pathogens, it's like this. We've said this in our office. There's a few things that are what we call primary causes, right? Mm-hmm. Root cause issues. Pathogens are one. Mold is definitely a big one. And with pathogens, I would throw things like, viral infections and retroviral infections in there, even though they're not necessarily pathogens. They're not really microorganisms either, by the way, which is one of my biggest pet peeves with this whole, COVID thing, that they'll talk about COVID as a pathogen or as a microorganism. And I'm like, dude, you're so wrong. Like, your label is wrong. Like, you're reading this quote unquote scientific article and you're not even labeling it correctly. It's information, but I'll throw it in the same category just for now. So mold, pathogens, viral infections, those hidden things that you don't see, heavy metals, those are root cause issues. Nervous system issues, those are root cause issues as well. I know, almost.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Wellness Radio. We are Drs. Warren, Dr. Nathan, and Dr. Rebecca Warren. We are local here to Chattanooga, located in the Hamilton Place area, and we do virtual health coaching all over the U.S. You can find us at drswarren.com and on Facebook at Drs. Warren. Now, over the break, I wanted to touch on this because now I want to talk about kind of getting into causes and like how do you end up here, like recognizing what led you to this path. We had an amazing question during the break about like mold and pathogens, and can it lead to that? So, a lot of times we see blood sugar issue as just food. A majority of people, it will be just food. But the reason why it's become such a epidemic is because there's so much more that can contribute to high blood sugar. I want to touch on this because a lot of times we ignore this. That cortisol, our stress response hormone, which is fantastic. It's what has helped us see gains in the gym, or cortisol is what helps you wake up naturally in the morning. Cortisol has kept us alive.
Thank you for pointing that out. Too.
Yeah, from
That's
the
good.
beginning of time, because we hear cortisol is so bad. Cortisol is fantastic. You need it. But the problem is a lot of people are chronically producing higher cortisol levels, right? And what does that mean? You're kind of in a survival response. So if you've been exposed to mold, if you have cavitations, meaning like infections from dental procedures like root canals, or like getting wisdom teeth taken out. And just so you know, just because you take an x-ray and they're like, oh, the wound's healing nice. Cavitations, unless you have someone that is specifically looking at a cone beam x-ray and knows how to identify the tissue changes within your jaw, you can absolutely still have an infection, even if your wound healed well. But it could be a lot of toxicity. It can be work stress. It can be you were in a car accident and you never corrected your spine. There's different things. Remember, stress can be real or perceived. It can be broken relationships. But what you have to understand is that if you're having this increase of cortisol naturally raises glucose. It will have glycogen dumps from the liver. You're just going to see, and the reason why is because, let's take a second. Why, if your cortisol is high, would you have high glucose? Because your body is thinking you're in survival mode. Yep. I'm going to have to fight for my life. I'm going to have to do all these things to survive. I need quick energy because they're going to have to run. We don't have food. It's a very ancestral thing that our body is doing, a very natural thing. So when you're stressed out, you need fuel. Yep. You're going to hold on to that blood sugar. You're going to dump that blood sugar in hopes of you burning it because you're so stressed out. Your body thinks you're literally being chased by a tiger, but you don't. You don't burn up that glucose. We're pretty much sedentary, but for how much glucose you're dumping into your bloodstream, you're not able to burn that out. Right. So cortisol that will rise with internal stressors, external stressors, and you're not burning it because you're literally not having to like run around for your life. Cortisol is a thing. I mean, I think people are toxic. I think our food sucks, and we're stressed out. No wonder everyone has a metabolic issue or can't have a metabolic issue.
I was going to say, you know who's got a lot of metabolic issues that we see all the time now?
Who?
If you guys have been to Whole Foods recently and you see the people that shop there during this time, right? You got people that are buying amazing food, right? Yeah. All kinds of organic food and everything. Out. But they're like the mask Nazis, right? Like they are so afraid of this virus that they're sitting at home eating the best food in the world, but they are stressed beyond belief. And if you actually look, and this is something that's interesting, you know, the people that I'm finding that are testing positive more and more are the people that are freaking out about it all the time. And so what's wild is they're eating the best food in the world, and yet they are absolutely, damaging their body from a metabolic standpoint.
And it can show up a different way. We do know that cancer cells, they gravitate towards glucose because it's easier for those cancer cells to metabolize and to utilize. Yes, I just said that. Regardless of what an oncologist says, and the crazy thing is the studies are there. Like, it's not like this is like new age stuff. The studies are there. And the biggest concern at the beginning, or the biggest concern is that like, well, if someone's going through chemo, they're wasting away. So any kind of calories that you can get into their bodies matter. That is wrong.
So wrong.
Quality of calories matter. We know that in the UK, they did a study like 10 years ago where they found a cost-effective way to find cancer. And what they do is they kind of put this like glucose fructose kind of combination in the body, which they say it's the equivalent of half a candy bar, and they do imaging because they can see the cancer cells metabolizing that sugar solution. So we know this to be true. That, and let me go ahead and say this. I want you guys to understand, we don't tell our kids that sugar is bad. Okay,
right.
Like that's not, this is bad because it has sugar. We say, this is going to actually be not the most, we talk to our kids like this, this is not the most ideal because it has too much sugar.
Yep.
It's too much of it. Sugar is not a bad thing. I get that, guys. And when you have a metabolic issue and your insulin's working overtime, moderation is not okay. I mean, we did a whole diabetes talk or blood sugar talk last year. We do it every year. Maybe we need to do it here soon. Maybe we'll have to see what the regulations are. But I mean, the recommendations, like once you get on metformin, you need carbs to kind of not crash you.
Was it 40 grams per meal or something?
Yeah, something crazy. And the American Diabetic Association recommends like 30 grams per meal and then 20 grams. I mean, your body can't handle carbs, but now you need carbs to not feel like crap and crash. Like if you don't realize how screwed up that is, that's just not good. So like your cells become insensitive. You have all these issues, and so what's the first step?
You damage your mitochondria. When you damage your mitochondria too, guys, you really leave open for more damage to your DNA. So if you have, maybe you're that person that's like, well, my mother had diabetes, my grandmother had diabetes, like it runs in your family. Guess what that means? That means that you have that genetic predisposition that may mean it's easier for you to develop those symptoms. But it's the lifestyle that expresses that gene, right? So like if you are consistently having higher blood sugar and you're putting that environment around that cell and you're damaging your mitochondria, you will express that gene like faster than some other people will. That's why you may have known people in your life, maybe they're 70, 80 years old and you're like, well, they've never really eaten that, they've never really eaten good, but they don't have diabetes.
Or they drink Coca-Cola. Like grandparents and great-grandparents all drink a lot of Coke, I feel like. And I'm just like, they don't have diabetes.
But they didn't have diabetes.
But they didn't,
Expression, right? Gene expression. And so, I mean, I think this is something that is probably what we're dealing with right now in our country from a health standpoint. Probably the number one, maybe number one damaging, health concern that we have in the United States of America. Because if you deal with that, you prevent heart disease.
Wait, hold
cancer.
on, because I want to...
Okay.
Prevent what? Heart
disease. Yep.
Heart disease is not fat.
No, not at all. No, come on, dude.
People are about to be like, that's not what my cardiologist said. I mean, it's not a fat issue. It's not just a salt issue with like the blood pressure thing. It has always been a sugar issue. You have been lied to, and if you did not know that, you should be kind of pissed because look it up. I read it every time we talk about heart disease and sugar. Big expose. I think British Medical Journal or New England Journal of Medicine did this whole thing about how we got lied to. These major studies in the 60s was paid off by the sugar industry to make studies look, a review of literature, make it look that it was sugar and not fat that caused heart issues. All of our, government standards were based off of that. We had the low-fat movement, and yet heart disease is the number one killer in the U.S.
Yeah, and when you say that, doesn't that make sense that we should probably, all you guys listening, you should probably go line up here in a few weeks because Pfizer's probably telling the truth, right? Get ready for that
90%.
one. I bet, 90% effective. Dude, what an absolute load of malarkey. That's so crazy. But anyway.
Malarkey?
Yeah, it sounded like I'm 97 years old.
Malarkey.
That's because I wanted to say something else, but you can't. But anyway, I mean, you should totally trust everything that's coming out about that. But that's so true. I mean, it is a heart disease, which is the number one killer in the United States of America. Well, actually, I should say number two behind our medical system, which is really where the majority of the deaths happen. But it's the highest disease-causing death. Cancer as well, right? Cancer as well. When you look at the studies, we know that about 6 to 10% may be genetically based, but that means the majority, up to 90% of cancer is lifestyle related, and sugar is going to be a major part of that as far as metabolic health goes. So I know we got to take another break, and so again, if you want more information, if you want to come sit down with us, if you want to really start to get on your way of reversing your own metabolic disease, not because we treat metabolic disease, but because we coach you in lifestyle changes, you can actually either give Heidi a call at our office. That number is 423-362-5360. Again, that's 362-5360. Or you can go on our website, doctorswarren.com, and I think there's a banner at the top of our website where you can actually, click on that, and you can get on a call with our clinic director. It's a free call. You can schedule it and see if you're a good fit and where you're a good fit. Maybe you're looking for just chiropractic care and you want to work on, your nervous system, or you've got low back pain, neck pain, headaches. Or maybe you're somebody that wants to do functional wellness and you want to work more on the metabolic side of things. Maybe you're somebody that says, I want to do both. Well, Mary Beth, our clinic director, can help, decipher out what's going to be the best for you, so we're not wasting your time, we're not wasting your finances, we're finding out exactly where you fit, because everybody's an individual, right? Everybody's different. So again, you can go on doctorswarren.com and you can find out more about, that and scheduling that appointment there as well. So this is Wellness Radio. We'll be right back after the break.
I had to check with our team to make sure that banner's on.
Oh, yeah. I think it is.
No, it's not.
Oh, it's not.
You don't even look at our website. Our website's awesome. If you guys haven't checked it out, doctorswarren.com.
It is pretty cool.
We're really proud about that. It's really loud.
We're proud because I didn't have anything to do with it. So
that's not why we're proud, because we don't know anything about websites.
If I built our website, it would be terrible.
It'd do like old HTML, it'd be like graphics that dance and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyways.
Who knows?
A big thing I think that's really surprising, and I just hate, is that a lot of female hormone issues are related to blood sugar issues. PCOS is a metabolic disorder, but not just PCOS. When, I do a hormone testing, and a lot of the pathways are affected by low or high insulin production.
Yeah.
So even if, let's say endometriosis isn't it's more of an autoimmune disorder, or painful things, or low testosterone, we've found through studies that those are all affected by your body's ability to produce adequate amounts of insulin. And so it's just so much more, and we're just bombarded by a lot of misinformation. So a lot of women have hormone issues that they shouldn't have, and let's talk about this too, because gestational diabetes is just popping up like crazy. Gestational diabetes doesn't just get made. It just doesn't all of a sudden, just because you're pregnant, you have a blood sugar issue. You probably had underlying issues leading up to it that no one really tested and looked into. And I was talking to another health practitioner, and she was like, quite frankly, being pregnant is like having a parasitic infection. I was like,
that's a good way to put it. That's comforting.
It is.
You moms out there, right? You've had a few parasitic infections.
I hate thinking about it the way, but the truth is that the baby's needs will always trump what you might need and you might use. So the top priority is this child will suck nutrients out, will suck exactly what it needs, and you'll produce this healthy baby while you're being depleted, really. And so I do find that a lot of my prominent female issues where a woman's going to come in to see me usually pops up during pregnancy, of postpartum, and nursing, because we're so depleted of our most basic needs. Thank God to raise this baby, but now we're having these issues, and you are able to handle blood sugar issues. And we're going to talk about why. We're going to talk about nutritionally what you need to do.
Yeah, that's a good idea, for sure. We're about to go live again in just a second. All right, guys, welcome back to Wellness Radio. I am your health expert, Dr. Nathan Warren, and I'm here with my beautiful wife, Dr. Rebecca Warren. We've been talking about metabolic health, why it's so important in the prevention of cancer, heart disease, also obviously diabetes, and things like Alzheimer's and dementia, which again are actually on their way to, I was going to say bankrupting our country, but I think we're kind of doing that with the whole, scare of a pandemic thing. But either way, yeah, it's on its way, and it's not doing well. It's one of the fastest rising, chronic diseases on the planet. And again, I would even say, obviously there's some components of heavy metals, there's some components of mold, there's some components there too with neurological issues like Alzheimer's and dementia. But a big part of it is blood sugar imbalance over the course of years, right? 50, 60, 70 years. And we're starting to see it happen in younger and younger people. So if you're listening to this and you're like, you know what? Like, I don't want any of those things. Well, then you need to pay attention to your metabolic health. You have to. You absolutely have to. I've gotten to the point now where I don't think there's any situation, except for maybe some of like the top athletes in the world who are working out hours a day and really like, you know, hitting the gym harder than you guys could even, you know, fathom or do at home, or even that I would want to do. But I don't think any individual on the planet should be eating more than 200 grams of carbohydrate a day.
I want you to get people upset. Some people, this is going to ruffle the feathers. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Are carbs even essential?
Absolutely not. They're not. They're not essential. Like you maybe you're a dietitian listening to this, or a nutritionist or something like that listening to this, and you're like, "How? That's not true. I learned in school." Well, you learned the wrong information. Just like we learned there's only 3 phases of water. That's the wrong information. Actually, maybe back then, if it was years ago, it was right, but now it's not. Yeah. There's 4 phases of water. But when you look at something like are carbohydrates essential? They're not. If you don't have enough fatty acids, you will die. If you don't have enough essential amino acids, you will die. There's no such thing as essential carbohydrates.
And most of you guys, because like some people and some doctors be like, keto, it's gonna like burn your muscle.
Oh,
listen, you have so much stored up. Like, we are not running around hunting our food. You have so much stored up in your liver. You have fat. You have all these things that you would have to burn before getting to there. And you're not going to be wasting away your muscle.
Actually, I was going to say, one of the ways to help with cachexia, which is like what most people with
muscle
cancer
wasting.
die. Yeah, think about it. They are in a process of burning protein. They're burning protein. They're breaking down protein. That's why they're wasting away. So guess what you have to do? You have to metabolically change the body to burning what? To burning fat. That's how you bring them out of that state. Not by continuously giving them sugar and trying to help them gain weight. That's not how it happens, right? You have to get them metabolically in a state of burning fat for fuel, and then guess what happens? It stops. It changes the fuel that they're burning. They're actually then able to gain weight. So, it's absolutely true, even if it pisses you off, that carbohydrates are not essential. They're not essential.
And let's clarify something, because someone asked this.
Yeah.
On their 200 grams of carbs a day. Let me go ahead. We're going to go ahead and tell you just a quick thing. And Angela, who asked the question, you know this about us. When you're in a state that your body's just overwhelmed and you're carb toxic and you have a metabolic disorder, we do restrict carbs.
Yes.
But the body does fantastic on diet variation. So you should have a varied diet where you have seasons where you're eating a little bit more carbs. So when he says 200 grams of carbs, it means your body can handle carbs, knows what to do with them, and then will burn them.
It's a really
good point. I'll tell you this. I had someone who was diabetic, and I helped him, we coached him and got his insulin down. But a majority of you guys are eating easily more than some of you guys, breakfast is just 200 grams of carbs.
Yeah.
So when he says 200 grams of carbs, is if you're eating kind of like a paleo, feasting kind of diet. But I had this older gentleman, and I was like, all right, I just knew it just from talking to him. I was like, let's work on getting your carbs at least to 150, which is still a good amount. Yeah. And he was like, and he's a diabetic, by the way, and he's on all this insulin, has to take it at night, and he's like, oh, I mean, I could easily do that. Like, I'm sure I already keep it under or close to that. And I was like, how about this? Let's just reschedule an appointment for the next week, and I want you to count your carbs. And he came in next week, and he was like, I mean, I couldn't believe this one thing I ate was 60 grams.
Most of your coffee at the beginning of the day is, 80 grams of carbohydrates.
I mean, he ended up being like about 350 grams of carbs in a day, but you don't think about it. I had someone else. We were like, she was, I don't get it. Why is my blood sugar, I'm eating healthier. And she got this Aldi oatmeal. It wasn't sweetened or anything, but then she added this to it and then this to it and just a little bit of this here. And we ended up counting that her breakfast was 175 grams of carbs, but it was just like oatmeal and fruit and like something else. And and the serving size, serving. So she was shocked. She has this blood sugar issue her pain flares up because of all this glucose, and she thought she was doing well by eating oatmeal. Like we said, it's not that we don't tell our kids that sugar is bad, but too much of it all the time is bad.
Yeah.
Okay? We avoid it as much as we can. And if we have it, we get over it and we move on. But that's where the 200 grams of carbs comes from.
Well, think about like I was gonna say, like, people are like, well, I eat a bunch of fruit because fruit is cleansing to the body. Well, we're not saying that all carbohydrates are completely negative. There's a lot of great benefits, right? Like, you look at grapes, for example, like the skin on the grapes, like absolutely amazing as far as like antioxidants, polyphenols, loaded with those things. They're actually loaded with some antimicrobial properties as far as grape seeds go. So there's a lot of really good properties. But at the same time, if all you do is eat a ton of grapes, that's a lot of sugar, it's a lot of fructose, it's a lot of glucose, and guess what? Guess what ends up happening? You spike your blood glucose, and that is not a good thing, and it can go the opposite way. So we're not saying that all carbohydrates are bad.
Bananas aren't evil.
Yeah,
but if your body
point.
can't handle it, it can't handle it, and then you're negating the benefits that you could get from eating that fruit. And
so what would you suggest they do?
Well, first of all, thank you for asking that question. I was going to say, if you're listening to this and you want to find out more information about who we are, how we can help you, check out our stinking awesome website that our clinic director made. It's drswarren.com, DRSWARREN.com. You can request a consult there. The banner was not on before.
Oh, sorry.
It is on now. You can go on there and schedule a call with our clinic director to see if you're a good fit. Or go ahead and call someone right now in our office to set up a consult. Heidi's standing by. That number is 423-362-5360. But what would I do for... I do want to say this, though, because there's a lot of people that will... And I've had this happen in the office. 95% of you guys can do really good with changing your nutrition. There's going to be a good... I would say it's more than 5% nowadays, 10%, maybe 15% that you have underlying issues. You've got to detox. You have toxins. You have heavy metals. You still have silver in your mouth. So let me go ahead and say silver. You have mercury in your mouth that somehow we were convinced that it was safe to keep in there for decades.
Until when? Until during
recently,
this COVID thing, like 30 years like too late, the FDA's like, oh yeah, by the way,
Mercury
you
in your
probably
mouth.
shouldn't get those put in your mouth because, oh yeah, they are highly toxic. Oh yeah, they can create a numerous amount of, neurological issues and damaging things to your body. But we're going to announce this 30 years past the point when they should have announced it.
Well, the crazy thing is, what I never understood is that they say before there was any kind of recognition that possibly 51% mercury in your teeth could be toxic. What people were told before, what Dennis would say is that it's a problem and toxic when you put it in, and it's a problem and toxic when you take it out. But for some reason, not for 40 years. Some of you guys got that put in when you were children, And so a lot of you guys can actually see some remarkable changes just by changing your nutrition. And can you touch on this?
Yeah, go ahead.
On the fact that if you restrict carbs, you're not... losing calories because you're increasing fat.
Yeah, so when we're coaching somebody on reducing their carbohydrate load, like the goal is not starvation, right? We may utilize some fasting. Fasting and starvation are two completely different things. Like when we're cutting out carbohydrates, I am increasing their intake of good, healthy dietary fat. Why? Because a big part of getting your metabolic health the way it needs to, and maybe the biggest part, is healing the cell membrane, right? Because the cell membrane is where the receptors are that bind to your insulin. And so we have to increase our good dietary fat. And when I say that, I'm talking about avocados, avocado oil, grass-fed butter, raw nuts and seeds, pastured egg yolks, all of these really, really good healthy fats, maybe some cold-pressed flaxseed oil, olive oil, all of these different things to rebuild the cell membrane. And again, it adds in actually a lot of times more calories, but more nutrient-dense calories. And again, it helps to satisfy the craving for, higher glucose foods and really high carbohydrate foods. The other thing that you find too is as people are transitioning I really recommend, and I know you do too, increasing your intake of good salt, right? Good salt, not yeah.
What?
Like, yeah, I know, right? Like, how can we suggest this? But it's actually, when you look at pretty much any animal on the planet, the one of their primary things is to look for a salt lick or some type of salt source in their society.
Isn't there like salt lick sausages or something?
Maybe.
I don't know.
That sounded weird.
Okay, I saw a billboard on the side of the highway
really?
in like Backroads, Alabama.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a caller in. I
have a
honestly
question?
don't know how to do this because we're remote.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Here we go.
And it's on.
Hello.
Guys, my name is Lyndon. I'm enjoying the show.
Oh, hey.
Minutes actually, and what you're talking about kind of hits home. I was diagnosed as a diabetic many years ago, and my doctor, he's an older fella, and what he said was, "Oh, you've got sugar," and I'm like, "Well, okay, what does that mean?"
Yeah.
And he says, "Well, you got to quit eating sugar. Quit eating sugar."
Oh man, I love it. Yeah.
About 8 or 9 years, and then found out that I'm not a nutritionist or anything, so found out that carbs are converted to sugar. So you got to cut the carbs too.
Yes.
And, once my wife and I figured out that, now we did the ketogenic diet. I'd like to hear your thoughts on keto. But once we've done that, I've lost about 75 pounds.
Wow.
My A1C is,
that's awesome.
And so if you wouldn't mind, I'll back out and let you guys talk. I appreciate you taking my call.
Oh,
Well,
thank
congratulations!
you, Lyndon. That's awesome,
like
man.
that's it. Well,
That is
amazing. I had touched you because I was like, doctors do that though sometimes.
Yeah.
They'll be like, get rid of sugar, and you're like,
What?
Oh, okay. Like, I'll stop putting sugar in my coffee.
Sugar. I'm like, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What can I eat? What can I just cut out the sugar?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Well, that was the funny thing. Like,
Way.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much
Lyndon,
for
calling
in.
man, and that's amazing.
Well, but that's what I was saying. Like, most of the time when people come in, they're like, well, I don't have cupcakes. I'm like, yeah, but you have the salad dressing that has all this sugar in it.
Yeah.
Everything technically has sugar in it. Like everything. Like your ketchup, your pasta sauce. The food industry realized that they can get you hooked by adding sugar to stuff.
For sure.
And then you're stuck there. So when we come back,
man, that's awesome. I love to hear that.
We're going to touch on keto because we're going to wrap up the show on keto because some of you guys are hearing a lot of misinformation. We're going to give you quick tips on how to do it the right way. But if you want to find out more about that makes me so excited to hear that people are taking 75 pounds.
Awesome.
And I'm sure that happened over time and it takes commitment. And the thing is, weight loss is not the goal. The side effect is weight loss.
Yes.
When you're metabolically changing, your hormones balance and weight loss happens if you're doing it the right way. If you'd like some more information about who we are, doctorswarren.com. Find us on Facebook at Doctors Warren, and our office number is 423-362-5360. We'll see you right after the break. Well, again, we live in a world that we're just overwhelmed with information. So I actually don't think it's helpful just to tell someone to get rid of sugar. It's not just the added sugar you add to stuff, and it's not just the candy.
Right.
When
there should have been more direction. Like I like that he was like, he kept the simplicity of it and was like, dude,
you want people to do
like
it,
you're sugar toxic, right? That's basically what he was saying. But then there was no like direction afterwards. It was just like, you're sugar toxic, now go for it. Instead of being like, hey, you're sugar toxic, what does that mean? That means that you're consuming not only a lot of processed sugars, but you're consuming high amounts of carbohydrate, sometimes in the form of good food, but we need to do the opposite of that. We need to reverse engineer it. We need to, go more towards a ketogenic diet where we're eating lots of good, healthy dietary fat, we're eating good, healthy protein, and we're limiting the amount of carbohydrates that we're consuming. And when we do consume, some carbohydrates, they're very, very nutrient-dense carbohydrates and usually rotated over time.
And then let me go ahead and say this because, carbs are going to be huge for pregnancy. I never tell women, do keto while pregnant. I say, listen to your body while pregnant.
Yep.
I ate pounds and pounds of kale and I needed it. And then with Rosie, ate pounds and pounds of king crab legs. They're so expensive.
That was an expensive
I needed it. It was like minerals and
craving.
stuff.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But with gestational diabetes, you'd be quite surprised at how much you're eating too much of, that you can still eat very healthy amounts of carbs, but less, getting what you need and not have this kind of crazy imbalance. So finding your relationship with how your body responds to food,
Yep.
finding your understanding your relationship with how your body responds to stress.
Yep, for sure. And so, like, as we go into it, I think we have to, let's kind of like dive out into like a game plan, right? Like, what would it look like as far as, if you have diabetes right now? Let's say you've had type 2 diabetes, for the past year or the past 30 years, right? What does it look like for you to start moving down a path of reversing your diabetes, right? What it looks like is this. It looks like, number one, right, I would start with some form of fasting. You've got to start with some form of fasting, even if it's a little bit, right? I have some people that even just getting to 12 hours is enough for me, right? It's getting to 14 hours maybe, that's enough for me. So getting to some sort of fasting where you're going from waiting your last meal of the day to the first meal of the next day. If you can hit more around the 17, 18 hour mark, I'm even more excited, like maybe like an 18-hour fasting window, 6-hour eating window. You're going to get more accomplished that way. But you got to start somewhere with some form of fasting. The second thing is then you've got to, again, change up and get rid of the processed sugar, getting rid of the the higher amounts of carbohydrate, and again start limiting that to 50 grams or under. That's a good way to do it. I think we're about to go live again. Can't hear. Oh, there we go. All right, guys, welcome back to the Wellness Radio. I'm your health expert, Dr. Nathan Warren. I'm here with my beautiful wife, Dr. Rebecca Warren. We're going over everything metabolic health. We're talking about, again, right now, I kind of wanted to dive into, what is a game plan as far as if you're diabetic, no matter how long you've been diabetic, what are the steps to take? So I mentioned fasting, some sort of fasting on here. I'm not telling you to jump into a 5-day water fast. I'm saying doing some sort of fasting. I know one really good, kind of ideal place to get to is an 18-hour, fasting window, 6-hour feeding window where you're eating like maybe 2 meals during that time. That's a really good, place to be as far as fasting goes. And then starting to cut back your carbohydrate intake and your sugar intake. So what I mean by that is zero processed sugar, and less than 50 grams of carbohydrates, total throughout the day. Some of you may need to even go lower than that depending on how long you've been a diabetic. And again, I would save the majority of those carbohydrates for later on in the day so that it actually helps with the melatonin spike at night and help you with being able to sleep. Increasing your dietary fat, your good healthy fat, which I went over just a second ago. Again, decreasing your overall, carbohydrate load. If you're going to consume carbohydrates, in the form of like raw nuts and seeds, in the form of maybe a little bit of like wild blueberries, but something simple, and in the form of like your vegetables, right? Like, leafy green vegetables, cruciferous vegetables, and consuming high amounts of those nutrient-dense foods. And then starting on some supplementation, right? So we know that good healthy fat is a great one to do. So I like Pure Form Omega as a really good thing that you can actually find on our website. If you go to the Doctors Warren, the shop area, you can find some more information about that. And start utilizing that. And then some things that help to lower blood glucose. We know things like alpha lipoic acid help to lower blood glucose. We know things like bitter melon extract, helps. Berberine helps. So you can do a combination of maybe an herbal supplement that really helps to lower blood glucose prior to the meal. So if you enjoyed the show, you want more information about us, go check us out at drswarren.com, DRSWARREN.com, and you can schedule an appointment there. You can schedule a free conversation with our clinic director and learn how you can connect with us best. Or you can give the office a call. That number is 423-362-5360, and we can start working on your metabolic health and your health in general, literally starting next week, which is going to be super fantastic. So this has been Doctors Warren on Wellness Radio, and we'll see you guys next week.
All right, guys. And for you guys, if you would join our newsletter, we'll send out more information on what we talked about. We'll send a recap of this radio show, blog post, everything throughout the week. So go to doctorsroaring.com, put your email in then, and then you can get that information.
No spam from us, just good information.
We don't even know how to spam people.
I don't know how to
We're like,
spam
I don't know if
people.
we can even have enough time to spam people.
Yeah, right.
Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Have a great weekend.
Yeah.